The tide is running high after a big overtime win in week one. Hi, everyone, and welcome inside the Tide Football pregame show. I'm your host, Michelle Fenelon, alongside the voice of Everett High School sports, Josh DelGaizo. Josh, what a way to start off the season.
Well, I tell you, Michelle, what a way indeed. We talked about it, the most highly anticipated matchup in week one throughout the state, and it sure did live up to its billing. You had a 2-point victory by the Crimson Tide coming down to a 2-point conversion. It was wild. It was a great atmosphere down in Westwood, the Hawk Bowl, as they call it, and high school football in Massachusetts. It was good to be back.
Oh, it feels great to be back. We will talk more about that win against Xaverian, what we liked, what this team needs to work on. We'll hear from a defensive player, Jalen Murphy, and we'll talk about tonight's game against Somerville. But first, before we look ahead, let's look back against the game against Xaverian.
Yeah, it was a great game. I mean, when you take that game, what you really have to like from the Crimson Tide, so the very beginning of the game maybe didn't start out great. You received the ball to start the game. It was a quick 3-and-out. It might have been one first time. I believe it was a 3-and-out picked up. Xaverian got the ball right back. They were managed to get the ball downfield. Joe Kelcourse ran the ball very well in that first drive. The Crimson Tide defense, they bend a little bit, but they didn't break, holding Xaverian to a field goal. Oliver Waddleton, who did a great job kicking for the Hawks. And I think that actually gave the Crimson Tide some momentum. It looked like the Hawks were just going to go right down, make it 7-0. They held them to 3, and then all of a sudden, the Crimson Tide offense started to get going, and that started with junior quarterback Kamari Ellerby. We talked about him at great length in the pregame show, and he had a lot on his plate, given the keys to the program, and boy, did he deliver. The junior was specially connected on a 59-yard touchdown pass to Ishmael Zamore, which got the scoring going. And then the Crimson Tide eventually got their lead up to 10. They had a 10-point lead into the fourth quarter. That was also by way of a 79 home run yard pass to Moses Sade. So you could see the big play potential. But I thought Ellerby was terrific making his varsity debut. He did a great job. And the Crimson Tide were terrific, hanging on to it. They actually lost a 10-point lead, but then they hung on to it. They went to overtime. It looked like maybe Xaverian's going to wrestle this one away. And I thought the Crimson Tide showed a champion's resolve out there to hang on to the victory and pull out a narrow 2-point wild one.
What stood out to you the most about that win against Xaverian?
I think what stood out, again, I kind of mentioned the resolve, but what stood out the most is how the Crimson Tide were able to overcome so many different things throughout the game. They had some tough penalties at times. They never seemed to hang their heads in any fashion that would take them out of the game mentally. They stayed with it. So I'm going to keep kicking on the mental resolve that they had, that they showed, and also coupled with their brute physicality on the offensive and defensive line. So let's get into that a little bit. We talked about the offensive and defensive lines, and they were terrific. The offensive line, I thought they gave Ellerby time to throw when he needed to. They moved the football on the ground when they needed to. And then let's talk about that defensive line. It's a very deep unit. They're able to rotate in a number of bodies, and everyone that goes into that defensive line, they're able to hold the run through, get pressure up the field, and keep the pressure on the other team's quarterback. And I thought really that was the difference. I thought the offensive and defensive lines, along with the team's mental resolve, were the reason why they escaped with the big victory.
Sticking with that defense, one of the concerns you said you had about this defense was the secondary. How do you feel about them after week one?
I thought the secondary answered the bell big time. And again, that concern was simply because you had 3 out of 4 of those players graduate, and even a fourth. Tyler David was also an instrumental player in that secondary that I didn't mention him in week one. He also graduated. So you had basically 4 guys with playing time back there in certain packages. You only had one returning in Moses Sade. He was incredible. I think Ishmael Zamore showed a lot of people, I can play defensive back. He had a huge interception on a trickery play from Xaverian that might have worked. They had the guy there, but Zamore came covering so much ground from the other side of the field. Pass was maybe a hair underthrown, and he made the play. Otherwise, if it's not Zamore out there, that play is still going to be completed for a big gain. So I long wind give you the secondary definitely answered the bell. They were great.
Shifting gears a little bit to the offense, we talk about all the talent this offense has, especially with JC and Ish. How much did that talent stick out to you?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we all know, we've talked about J.C. Cuervo. He's going to be someone that every team out there is going to have to circle and who to cover. And they're also going to have to watch out for Ishmael Zamore. And he's not just lined up as a wideout. He works out of the backfield as well. So those 2 guys alone constantly have the ball in their hands. But if there's a third guy that maybe you lose sight on, it's number 2, Cam Muhammad. We don't lose sight on him over here. He's part of the 3-headed attack that makes that team go. And it's a compliment to all of their parts. Corvo's the big power back. Zamor's the do-it-all, can get down the field, a little bit long, can run by the defender. And Muhammad is just that little spark plug. He gets out in space, he makes guys miss, and if he's in the open field, good luck. You're probably not going to catch him. So I think when you have a three-headed attack like that, and then you pair it with that offensive line, and then you get the debut that you receive from Kamari Ellerby, a quarterback. I mean, what's not to like coming out of the Crimson tight end? You want to clean up some penalties. You want to clean up some of the discipline, and I believe they will do that. Coach DiLoretto was all over that and his coaching staff. But once you correct that part of it, yeah, you really like what you saw on the field.
Teams that will play the Crimson Tide, especially tonight, Somerville, they're probably like, wow, now we have to deal with Cam Muhammad too. Like I said, tonight, Everett plays Somerville. What's one thing you want the Tide to do or don't do that happened in week one that you really want to see them clean up?
Yeah, I would like to see less penalties on the field, so we'll go to that. Just clean up some of the discipline, try to really play clean football. The Tide actually didn't commit any turnovers, so continue to protect the football, play turnover-free football, but let's clean up some of the penalties. Let's clean up some – we seemed like on the other side of the ball, there was some hard count issues. Not actually often. Maybe it was our offensive line that had a couple hard count issues, so let's try to stay on side. Just basically clean up. Otherwise – the fact that everyone out there, when the ball was in their hand, when there wasn't flags thrown on the field, I thought the Crimson Tide looked pretty good. So clean it up. I think everything will play itself out.
Who do you think is going to have a big game?
Well, I think so. Corvo, I think, will run wild early and often in this one. I think he'll add some quick touchdowns to his already building touchdown resume early on in this game. So, and again, it's more so because I'm not sure they're going to have a very difficult time slowing Corvo down. Any one of the ball carriers getting the ball against this offensive line is going to have their hands full. And again, no slight to the other team. It's just it's not a very evenly matched game coming up. And the Crimson Tide, they have a special team, and I think they're going to be pretty tough to deal with.
We're moments away from kickoff, but first, let's hear what senior defensive end Jalen Murphy had to say about tonight's game. I'm alongside senior defensive end Jalen Murphy. Jalen, another game tonight, this one against Somerville. What's one thing you feel like you really want this team to do better that you didn't do in game one?
Well, what I want this team to do better is to really come together and work with the coaches and be more disciplined because we had a lot of flags, and I just want to clean up. We want to clean up the mess that we made in the first game and want to show that we're a disciplined team and that we're better than we were week one.
In week one, this team showed its resiliency to come back, especially in that overtime period. You made big play after big play. What do you think was the biggest play you made in week one?
The biggest play I made was stopping the two-point conversion on an overtime, and I felt like that really gave my team a good chance to score and win the game and pass it to Cam for that amazing ending.
You are one of the strong points of this defense. Coming into the season, what's one thing you really wanted to make sure you worked on?
Well, coming into the season, one thing I wanted to work on was my pass rush and just being able to be a great leader because I knew I was going to be one of the captains because I started since sophomore year and I had to set an example for the younger guys and I just really wanted to show what it's like to be a leader and what it's like to be on the Everett Crimson Tide.
To get that win in week one against Zavarian, a really good team on the road in overtime, what does that say about this team?
What it says about this team is that we work very hard and we keep up the tradition because they haven't beat us for a very long time. And I'm glad we got to keep that up. And, I just want to say don't count us out on anything. We're going to keep on fighting to the end.
Thank you, Jalen. And we will not count you out tonight against Somerville. All right, Josh. It's that time again. It's the home opener. Who do you have?
Well, I think it's not going to bear any big surprise here. The Crimson Tide, they should roll in this one, and I'm going to go 42-0. I really love the Crimson Tide defense. It's hard to move the ball on them at all. You saw what they did against a very good Zavarian attack, and I just think Somerville's going to have their hands full. They'll give it everything they have. There's some nice athletes on that Somerville team. They'll show up and play, but again, the matchups are what they are. I think the Crimson Tide will be overwhelming in this one.
Thanks, Josh, and thank you for tuning in to our Tide Football pregame show. I'm Michelle Fenelon. He's Josh DelGaizo. Enjoy the game.